General Protocol Spaces. Banking on Freedom.
Good deal. Let's get this started. So, welcome to General Bull 35 of N. We called this one Smooth Sailing with Bitcoin Cash because we're going to go and just talk about all the things that are going great. And there's a lot of them. Like I have a long list and I really doubt we're going to be able to get to all of them. But yeah, this is going to be good stuff. So we'll get started. If you look on Twitter, I've posted the list. So the starting list here is the GP sponsorships, the General Protocol sponsorships, Argentina Conference, XO Stack, XO Wallet, 2025 chips, and of course BCH in general. So we're gonna have a lot to get started here. So for the sponsorships, we just put out a tweet, and it's the first one in the Twitter thread there that you can look at. And this is where we supported a bunch of projects, right? These are things that we depend on that are very important to us. And maybe I'll ask Jonathan to explain more about it. But so there's Electron Cash, there's a LibAuth project, there's the Bitcoin Cash podcast, Bitcoin Cash Node, Cash Script, the BCH compiler, the Bitcoin Cash Foundation, Fulcrum, the indexer, and Cash Connect. So Jonathan, would you mind just saying a few words, and we'll just start chatting about the sponsorships and why that stuff is important to us?
Sure. So, you know how once upon a time we decided to build a company, and we used this tooling from Bitcoin.com, and we weren't paying for it, right? We were just building for the sake of building, like move as fast as we could at the time. And it turns out that not paying for it was potentially not a good decision, because eventually it became fragile and we had to move over to something else. We also have more cases, but that is a pretty profound one. So it turns out that when you have an ecosystem of open source developers who are building things, if that doesn't contribute to their well-being or their financial gain or whatever, in at least some meaningful way, eventually they are going to stop doing more work, because work has cost. And so at GP, we want to make sure that we're not parasitic in nature, but rather that we are helping our ecosystem. And so as a result of that, we are providing sponsorships towards the part of the ecosystem that we directly or indirectly rely on.
Yes, exactly. The things that we directly or indirectly rely on. And this is important, right? Even if you look at this from like you said, it's a practical perspective. We need things to get done. We need things to work. We need the things that we depend on to work. And just practically speaking, you could go and do everything yourself. We could hire people to do all these things, but that actually doesn't work as well as what we have, which is this decentralized ecosystem where CashScript is working on their thing and Fulcrum is working on their thing, and they're way better at doing what they do than we would be if we tried to hire people and do that. And other people make use of them as well, right? So other people support them in their flip starters and so forth. So yeah, it's a very practical thing for us. They get stuff done that's very important to us.
Yeah, our audio is also important in terms of like signaling and having proper information available to make good decisions. Right. So if we would move all this in-house, then things will still get built, but they will be more specifically built towards our peculiar problems and issues. And unless someone else gave us like external motivation to help out, then we would have no reason to really go build for others. But in a model where people who are like, take, for example, CashScript, right? It wasn't made for us, right? It was made by people who wanted to have it. And so we are just one out of many inputs to that information. And so our sponsorships gives them like a signal and helps out, let them know like what we think are important. But if other people also follow suit and start providing some small sponsorships on their end, then together it will both be sufficient enough to sustain that development, but it will also make sure that the development that does happen has better information to act on and is building for more and more valuable use cases than otherwise would have happened.
Absolutely. And I think we actually provide a pretty valuable signal, right? There's other people now who are making apps and so forth, but back earlier when we started the sponsorship program, it was very symbiotic, right? Like we provided feedback on how we needed things to work and what was useful and what was helpful and what the problems were. And I'm sure that was valuable feedback, right? Because that let them know what to prioritize and so forth. So yeah, it's good. It goes in both directions. Like you said, it's a signal. I've invited a few other people up here just to see if we can get conversation. But yeah, so thanks, Jonathan. That was cool. And we've also got on here, let's see. Yeah, we have everybody on speaker now. So Jim is here. Sakib, you name. Did you guys have any particular thoughts on sponsorship?
I just want to add that we choose to lead by example because of the long and painful history in BCH of people not doing that and in the end not getting what they like. And another little tidbit is that every now and then we do bring up like, okay, should we sponsor everything that like literally everything that we depend on? And so one day if the Linux Foundation gets into gets into a better shape, and second starts accepting BCH, we might even toss some coins their way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. So we've actually looked at a lot of our dependencies, and I personally investigated each one of them and how it's possible to support them. Linux, some of our other open source dependencies, and it's actually quite hard in a lot of cases to support these without jumping through a bunch of hoops or like regulations or having to prove that your corporation something. It's actually a big pain to even just support these things. And some of them are a bit ridiculous also. Like I think it was Linux Foundation has like a minimum. You can only support them if you give a minimum amount of money, which is ridiculous. Yeah. So, but as soon as those add BCH as a way that we can support them, there's several more that we can support outside of that list that I shared.
A rising tide lifts all ships, and I think the philosophy of General Protocols right from the beginning, because this was 2 years ago that GP has been sponsoring various actors in the ecosystem, has been the right approach. You cannot have a decentralized ecosystem and a decentralized infrastructure if it's just one party doing everything. And so I think the fact that GP has been promoting and supporting other developers is a crucial part of the building process, the symbiotic relationship that we've developed, and I hope it continues. And I really do hope that other players and supporters continue to sponsor. Now, I think Bitcoin Cash does have a history of doing this, and GP does it via sponsorships. But of course, we have the Flipstarter program as well. And I think that is another way that the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem has been supporting each other to keep developing and keep building products. And that's, I think, a very similar process.
That's right. And as a matter of fact, one of our the ones that we sponsor is the CashScript, the compiler. And they did their Flipstarter. They just started their Flipstarter a little while ago, and they're doing it for a full year. To support a full year worth of work. And this is coming on their previous one, which was successful, and they did all kinds of important things based on that funding on the previous one. But now they have a new one, and the way GP sponsored them this time was through a pledge on that Flipstarter, which actually, by the way, Uname just realized like 2 hours ago got funded. So congratulations to CashCrypt, that would be Roscoe and Mathieu, who is in the audience here. So congratulations to you guys. You guys have deserved it. You've done a ton of work, good work, great communication, ongoing reliability. Yeah, huge positive impact on the decentralized organization, decentralized ecosystem that we have. Thank you guys for all that. Yeah, Flipstarter is there. What do you think about that idea, Sakib? That whole idea of decentralized organization. You think there's something to that?
I think it's the I can't think of another community or product in any economy that's decentralized and thriving. Maybe I'm wrong, right? And so I think what Bitcoin Cash is trying to achieve is extremely difficult, but extremely necessary. So decentralized anything, I think, is very difficult. But the fact that Bitcoin Cash, since the inception of Bitcoin, has continued to develop in this way and is growing, is a testament to this effort. So I think it's extremely difficult to answer your question, but you're doing it, and we're doing it together. And so yeah, we're showing that it can be done.
I think you're right. Yeah, just bit by bit, right? Like there's nothing ever starts fully formed, but yeah, layer by layer, bit by bit. I think we are, as an ecosystem, showing that it works. At least it feels that way. You never know when you're in the middle of something that's developing. It's never until like 10 years later that you can look back and say, oh yeah, obviously. All right. Okay. So the sponsorships are good. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I was just saying, if somebody can come up with an example, that would be great. But if I look at all company infrastructure, hierarchies, governments throughout the dawn of time, from kings and queens to governments now, it's always been humans have, thrive around a centralized leadership where they look up to somebody to lead them to do X, Y, Z. So again, if somebody can point out a model of a decentralized system that humans have succeeded in, I'd be very interested to learn, but I can't think of one.
Well, I mean, if you look at a high enough level, right, like just generally capitalism, and having people working in their own interest and groups working in their own interest, forget about, of course, it has issues and problems, but overall, it's a huge success in terms of a lot of things getting done that a central planner surely would have never come up with. All the things that individuals and decentralized, thinking of corporations as decentralized, right, as opposed to the old model of the everything under the crown, and the crown makes the decisions and so forth. So yeah, in that way, I think it's kind of an extension of that. But when it comes to money and the kind of things that we work on, those are traditionally very, very locked down and centralized. There's no decentralization to those. They're kind of not allowed to be decentralized even. All right. So sponsorships is good stuff. We appreciate all of you guys working on things, and we hope that the sponsorships make things better for you. And like Jonathan said, provide a nice signal. For Argentina conference, Sakib, you want to tell us a little bit about Argentina, what's going on there and what's set up? And I've invited Gerard up, but I'm not sure if he'll be able to get up and speak.
I mean, I can talk from a GP and BCH Bull perspective. I don't have the full insight into the entire conference, and of course, sad not to be there. From a BCH Bull perspective, I think it's extremely exciting because last year, or was it 2 years ago, BCH Bull as the first sponsor was in Nigeria, and we supported that conference and we sponsored it and advertised there. And then a year later, we're in the heart of Europe, and then a few months later, we're in Buenos Aires, and so it's extremely exciting to see the product going from country to country and continent to continent, and being branded and shown front and center as part of the Bitcoin Cash economy and the ecosystem, and just seeing the logo there and everybody enjoying it. I still love to see the BCH Bull T-shirts that we gave out in Slovenia. I see them on videos that people are making. And so from a BCH Bull perspective, it's extremely exciting to be in 3 countries, sponsoring different conferences, and it's great that we will have GP representation there with Gerard speaking on about BCH Bull and being a panel speaker. So yeah, I mean, it's exciting for us to be there and supporting.
Yeah, and I do have some of the other details, right? So it's a relatively large conference, right? Hundreds of seats, and I believe it's been sold out already. At least I saw that earlier that it was that the tickets are already sold out. And yeah, this is a place that unfortunately has a really clear need for alternatives to money and cash, right? So whether that's US dollar or crypto or whatever it is, solutions are welcome in a place that's experiencing high inflation. And in addition to that, for whatever reasons or historical reasons, Argentina has a really strong Bitcoin Cash community. And previously, right, in the past, it was a Bitcoin community, but that has become a Bitcoin Cash community there. And you know, they've been working and doing things since a very long time. Not sure if everybody's aware of the guys there, but they have been. If you've ever seen the Who Killed Bitcoin documentary, for example, that was by some guys in Argentina. They've done a lot of events. They have radio show. They get on all kinds of events there. They do promotion. A lot going on there. So unless you speak Spanish and pay attention to that sphere, you might not even know how much is going on there. It's a lot, as well as just adoption, right? Like local adoption and things going on. Yeah, I was hoping to get Gerard up because Gerard's going to be there for General Protocols, and he'll be presenting about BCH Bull, like Sakib said, and also being on one of their what's it called, the panel discussions where they have people up and cover some topics, see what everybody thinks about things. So he'll be there on both of those. Maybe if he can get up later, he'll have a talk. But I think he's in the middle of traveling right now, so he may be literally in the airport. Maybe not a great situation to talk from, but we're cheering for you, Jared. Hope you can get there. Everything's safe travels, man. And for anybody who will be there, let us know. We hope you'll be there. Get some pictures. Get some BCH Bull t-shirts or swag or whatever it is when you're there. Have a good time. All right. So XO Stack. This is actually a really big deal. We think this is a semi-historical type of thing that we've started to work on, and this isn't only us, of course, but it's the project that we're going to build. Our part of this historical thing that's going to happen with Bitcoin Cash and peer-to-peer money, and making it easy for people to build on, making the barriers to entry low. It's going to be a big deal. So you should go. If you're listening, go and check out xo.cash. xo.cash. Just have a look and see what it's about. But Uname, could I ask you to tell us a little bit about those two things, right? There's the XO Stack, which I listed on the thing, and then there's the XO Wallet. Could you lay that out for us a little bit?
In terms of actually laying down the details of those two, you might actually be the better person. But I'm going to talk a bit about the higher level nature of those things. So the first thing people would get upset about, as they do very often when they hear this, is that, oh my god, not another wallet, right? And it is true that the history of BCH was littered with yet another wallet and yet another wallet and yet another wallet, and every time another wallet comes out, they all tell you the same thing, whether they are trying to get funding from you or not. They will tell the exact same story, that we will aim to be a wallet that is consumer friendly, it's going to be easy to use. It is going to offer a very smooth workflow. It is going to be straightforward. People will love it for, like, I don't know, adoption or something. I am of course not saying that those things are bad. Those things are extremely important, and given this is BCH, those things, most people can even agree that those things are pretty central. But um, that there's a lot of those efforts, and we are not going for. Oh,
The Port of Buenos Aires.
Gerard, are you there?
I just
I,
muted him. Okay, we have proof that he's at the airport. I just muted him.
yeah.
Oh god, that's a good one.
Hey, hello, can you hear me?
Su atención, por favor. Buque.
Oh my god.
Yes, we do hear you. We also hear the airport.
The announcement sounds kind of ominous through the mic. Actually, like, oh my god, there's some kind of Twitter Big Brother is coming down on us.
Oh shit. Yeah, we'll wait until Jared gets into a quiet place. Yeah, go for it. So keep going, you do.
Anyway, so for people who are curious, we are not trying to do those yet another wallet thing. Although those values are important to us, we do aim for our end product to be very easy to use for the average consumer, and the general BCH audience. But our project is quite a bit more ambitious. Unlike some of the other projects out there, for the other projects out there, that each very often tends to want to just showcase one functionality at a time. There are perhaps wallets that are made basically just to give a very smooth experience on, say, Wallet Connect, or perhaps some other, if you're a bit more ambitious. On top of that, it's natural to get cash tokens. It's like, oh yeah, we are doing a cash tokens wallet, or in some other cases, you might go, oh, I want a we want a crypto gaming integration. There's nothing wrong with those, but we aim to provide a more generalized basis that makes it easier not only for people to use, but also for people to build on what BCH has gained in functionality over the past few years. We've got introspection, we've got cash tokens, we've got bigger integers, we got even bigger integers to come. We will get a very vast playground for people to we got a very vast playground for people to build UTXO smart contracts like nobody has ever seen before in crypto. And it is time to provide a solid and secure foundation for all of this. Not only for people who use our wallet, not only for people to develop for our wallets, but also for people who want to develop their wallets on our stack. So you might notice that in our past spaces, especially some of the early ones, we have talked nonstop about the need for native wallets. For wallets that are secure, for wallets that are flexible, flexibly secure through templates. To templating systems. Some of that was provided by LibAuth, and some of that was implemented later by Cash Connect. That is an ongoing work. This is supposed to be a milestone culmination of all of that. And for details, I will hand back to John.
Yeah, okay, that was good. I always love just stepping back, because I was talking with Cheapy Cheap Lightning the other day, and it's like, yeah, we're talking all these details like about some topic, and then Uname is like, okay, hold up, like pulls you up to the 10,000 feet, and is like, okay, here's the big picture, and it's always nice to hear that. But yeah, that's what we're building. Is that all these? There's all this potential in Bitcoin Cash, in the virtual machine, in the contracting system, in the just the plain network itself of just even sending and receiving. There's a huge amount of potential, but to realize that potential, people have to build something on it. You have to build products. You have to build services, and to do that, you either just like it has been for any system like Ethereum or whatever it was in the past, you either have to have really high level experts who have a lot of experience and know what they're doing and can do things safely and well, from the bottom level up to the top. You gotta start all the way at the low levels of building on the blockchain, and then go all the way up to the app level and do everything well. At every level, you have to do everything well. That's very expensive and very hard. So yeah, like Uname said, the XO stack part of it is going to make that barrier to entry much lower. This is the native wallet part that we talk about. It's not just about the wallet. It's about the whole process of app development and making that accessible to just app developers, instead of having to be an app developer who also has deep expertise in UTXO and how Bitcoin Cash works. That all of that stuff needs to be abstracted, so that you just need to worry about your own app, and you have a secure way to do that, both for yourself and for your user, without having to worry about all the details of building transactions and security of transactions. And there's a lot of holes and a lot of pitfalls if you don't know what you're doing. So that's the XO stack part, and make that barrier to entry low, and make we call it like the explosion of apps. I think it'll enable an explosion of apps by making the barrier to entry low for builders. So that's
I can elaborate on that.
Yeah, go for it.
If we go through the past, like there's been multiple times where we kind of like ask the question, like, what does it take to get BCH Bull into something like Bitcoin.com? And it hasn't happened. And when we made, or when Flipstarter came out, and we had the whole like plugin for Electrum Cash, like what would it take to make that work for something other than Electrum Cash? And these keep coming up, like, how do you make something A compatible with something B? And the answer so far has always been, you convince both parties to spend time, work, effort, and resources to actually build it. And as evident, that's not happening, right? So what we're doing with the XO stack and the wallet is that effectively making a platform where people can have their idea, like their app or the thing they want to do. And when they ask the question, what would it take to get it into the XO wallet? The answer is going to be, you don't need to talk to us. You don't need to convince us. You don't need to spend any of our resources. What you need to do is you need to make a template that explains what your app is and how it functions on chain. And then you need to tell your users to scan a QR code that links to that template. And in their XO wallet, the user will then say, yeah, I want to do this, or this looks good. Remember this going forward. So we remove the resource cost, the effort, the coordination aspect between the parties. And then we set up a like strictly defined standard to say that if you make templates for your app that explains how they function on chain, then any wallet that also follows the standard will have native support for your app. You don't have to make a bespoke wallet inside of your web app like most of our ecosystem has implemented it today. You can simply just describe how does this work on chain, and then tell people scan a QR code and you're done.
Yeah, I mean, that whole topic deserves a whole space. We should do a whole space to explain why this is valuable. Because unless you've actually built one of these apps, anybody who's out there who's actually built a full app. I mean, like a real thing, not just like a proof of concept, but you've gone from transaction building all the way up to a full user experience app and deployed all of that. It's a very tall order to get from the bottom to the top of that stack. And yeah, then on top of that, you have to, like Jonathan said, you have to build your own wallet in your app, because the wallets that people have in their phones and so forth are dumb. They're really dumb. All they know how to do is send and receive, which is the fundamentals of money, right? But they don't know how to send and receive with any kind of rules attached or any of the logic attached, which is smart contracts. And so, yeah, this templating system that Jonathan talked about is what wallets have to get to. We have to get to the point that your wallet is much smarter than it is today. And we're going to show how to do that.
I'll even argue that most wallets don't even know how to do send and receive. Or receive part they have pretty much nailed out, but the send part, not entirely sure about, because there are more ways than just pay to public key hash to send stuff.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, it's hard to explain because for people who are familiar with crypto, they're probably familiar with MetaMask, EVM, ETH, that kind of thing. And it's different because we're on a UTXO network. It's a different thing than that. And for people who know UTXO stuff, a lot of them just think, well, you just send and receive. That's all there is, right? And it's like, well, yes, but once you start to put logic on it and you actually have smart money, then your wallets have to also be smarter. Because if you don't, if your wallet is dumb, what happens in the end is you're depending on the app developer to be honest and to be correct. And that's not a good setup for, 8 billion people. For 8 billion people, you need a system where the wallet is on your side. The wallet knows what your money is. The wallet has your details. And the app developer doesn't need to know anything about you. And they can talk to each other in a way that makes sense. So that's what we're setting up with the XO stack. Let me explain the XO. Yeah.
I'll say that MetaMask is like a good example to compare against, mostly because it exists, not because it's actually a representative of the product we're trying to build. Because if you look at MetaMask, it's essentially a tool for signing payloads without needing to understand them. So contrast that with what we're actually trying to build, which is a tool to sign things that it does understand rather than things it does not understand. The difference here might not sound that important, but you'd be surprised how much money has been lost over people trying to do things they thought were right, but had no insight or no ability to actually verify anything, and had to, as John said earlier, like trust the website that presented the information to them. With the XO wallet and the XO stack, the templates will be fully sufficient to describe the things you are doing. And that means that when you go to a website, it's essentially only there to provide you like guidance or a user experience. It's not there to actually do actions. Right? It might have the best graph you've ever seen in the world that lets you know what you want to do. But once you know what you want to do and you want to take action, the XO wallet should be essentially self-sufficient to be able to take that action for you.
Exactly. Another way to put it is just that we have the advantage of hindsight. We can look back and see the strengths and weaknesses of what has happened with MetaMask and what has happened with the whole way that EVM and Ethereum setups work, and try to do +1, do better than that, do something that's significantly better than that we think will scale to many more people. Not only technically, right? Not only the network scaling, but something that actually makes sense, where you can do your regular banking and you don't have to be a crypto person and so forth to do all these things. So yeah, it's a tall order, but we got to make it work. We have a very high target to reach the world with P2P permissionless money, and yeah, you got to aim high, and that's what we're doing. So that's the first part. That's only part of it, right? That's the XO stack. And then there's the XO wallet on top of that. But the beautiful thing is that, like I said, if you're doing the XO stack well, if you're doing that right, then building things on top of it becomes a relatively easy and straightforward exercise because the stack is handling all that for you. So once we build the wallet on top, that's going to be relatively straightforward. It's more or less you're building a user interface, and we're going to show people how to do that. We're going to make ours, and all of this is going to be open source, right? The wallet, the stack, all of this. And we'll show how it works. We'll make our own platform with the wallet, make it work, and then anybody else can do exactly the same thing. I hope that eventually, building a wallet will be the same as for the developers out there, like building a Twitter clone. So if you don't know, like building a Twitter clone is like the modern equivalent of Hello World. You just go and you're like, oh, I'm going to make a Twitter clone. You get some repository, you add a little bit of logic, you make some systems that work and let people interface with it. And then, okay, now you've got Twitter. And of course, that doesn't actually work. You don't actually get to replace Twitter because that has all these network effects. But making the actual clone of it is pretty straightforward now that all the tooling and it's been proven and shown how to be done. So I hope that that's where it'll be, right? Anybody can make a wallet. Anybody can make an app. It'll be super easy to get that kind of thing. That's what we're aiming for with it. Hey, Jim, are you there? Is your mic working? Did you have anything you wanted to say on this? So Jim is a magician who's working mostly behind the scenes. Probably a lot of people don't know how much he does. But what kind of thoughts do you have on this whole XO stack and XO wallet? What do you think about it? What do you want to say? Anything particular you want to say about it?
Nothing really particular. I think you guys kind of covered most of it. The one thing that I was going to emphasize at the start was that it's it's not just the wallet; it's the whole stack. We're trying to make it so that it's really, really easy for developers to actually build apps. And I don't think I really have that much to add. You guys already did a really, really good job of actually describing what we're aiming for. The other one is what Jonathan kind of mentioned, establishing standards so that the wallet doesn't have to necessarily, incorporate an app specifically. As long as they talk the same language, use the same standards, any app that uses that standard will be able to talk to any wallet that uses that standard. And to me, that's a really big one because I think that's where we're getting a lot of kind of incompatibility across the whole ecosystem at the moment.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we didn't even mention that. But yeah, the XO stack will either create or encourage creation of these standards, right? That will make it so that it's straightforward for apps to talk to each other and for wallets and apps to talk to each other, which is something Jim has worked on for a long time and thought about for a long time, long before the XO stack was ever conceived of. And that actually is an important point, right? These things have been built up in layers, this realization that, oh, there's one way to do things. Like, for example, we used to use Bitbox. Jonathan alluded to us using Bitbox earlier. And it was amazing. It worked. And it was this thing that enabled a lot of people to make apps and to make wallets and so forth. But it had a lot of room for improvement. So, right, over time, we have built things in layers, like pieces and bits and pieces that all work together in a better way than the things that we had in the past. So you guys have worked on those, right? Like from the low level to the higher level. Jonathan, what are the ones that you have worked on?
I've been working mostly on the communication between the app and an indexer to get blockchain-related data, specifically the Electrum Cash and Electrum Cash Network libraries. And I kind of lost my thought. Did you have a reason to ask that question, John?
Yes, sorry. I'm here doing both things, trying to get the whole thing restarted and invited and everything. Yeah. So no, the point of it was just to say we're developing the XO stack, which requires a lot of intelligence, and it's going to provide a lot of the intelligence and knowledge in a kind of encapsulated way where people who come in to develop apps don't need to know all the details. And this has happened like in layers, right? This is built up in layers. Absolutely. It's not something that comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. So let me actually go back, and instead of talking about like what I've done so far, let's talk about what I expect to be there in the end. So a regular wallet has some key management, and then it has some communication layer in order to get information about what's happening on the blockchain, and also distribute some information about what it wants to happen on the blockchain, like sending transactions. Then, of course, is the app layer on top of it and the user interface and things like that. But the two really key parts is that key management and that communication side. The reason why regular wallets are relatively simple is because they don't keep an estate locally. They can cache, they can do performance optimizations and whatnot, but they really don't need to, because all the information about a wallet, apart from the keys, are stored on the blockchain. With a templated and script-based setup that we're looking to build, that is no longer true. You will no longer be able to spend holding only the key, because you are going to need not only the address of where the contract is, but also information about that contract that makes it spendable, because these contracts are now, they allow for more complex than just the casual send-receive part. So in the end, I think we're going to have like 3 main layers and a couple small ones on the side. It's going to be the key management. That's still going to be important. And that is a relatively well-known problem, but it's going to be somewhat reimagined. And then you have the network communication problem. That is also a relatively well-known problem. And in this part, we're not going to mess too much with like success. Instead, we are going to just take lessons learned and improve that layer based on our experiences of building a bespoke app in the ecosystem so far. The third part is going to be a state management situation where you can know what things are needed to be kept around and what they are being used for inside of contracts. And so with the XO stack, the key management and the state information management are probably going to be at roughly the same level in the stack. It's going to be almost equal importance, and they're going to be tightly integrated. By doing this, you remove the need from app developers and wallet makers to know and understand how all those parts go together. And so instead, they are able to build one layer higher up. And so what they will concern themselves with is what templates relate to my wallet, like what places on the chain can I find my money. And then the stack itself is going to make it very easy to make sure that all the state and all the keys and all these parts are easy to back up and are automatically kept in sync so you don't lose that state. The key and state management part is still a problem that isn't fully solved. Like, we know what we need to do, but we haven't actually built it yet. So we can't know if there are any like unknown gotchas or edge cases we need to care about. So that is something that is still going to be under research. And so the XO wallet is not coming out like tomorrow. It's going to take many months from here to get all parts of that stack and the wallet out. I can talk, however, a little bit more about the network communication side, because this is the layer that I'm actively working on right now. And that is improvements to the Electrum Cash stack for communication. So
and Jonathan, just a second before you start. So I wanted to say, if anybody's listening and you didn't understand some part or all of what Jonathan just said, imagine being a builder who comes in and is like, hey, this UTXO thing is awesome. It's super scalable and it has a really powerful blah, blah, blah. I want to build an app that does vaults, that does banking, that does loans, that does something. And I knew exactly how to do loans. I'm an expert in that. But all this stuff that Jonathan just talked about, I don't understand it. That's what we're trying to remove. So you don't have to know
Yeah,
all that
and those
stuff, right?
are pretty big stuff that bogs down a lot of developers. me
Yes,
included, when I came into this
completely.
space. In
Completely
fact,
bogs you down.
I figured out relatively quickly how to make like a single key, single address wallet, because there are plenty of examples. But even going from there over to like a standardized BIP32 or BIP39, doing these multi-key wallets is a bit of a jump up. And going from there over to multi-sig wallets is also like a significant jump up in like app complexity when you're building it. And so imagine coming in and like, yeah, okay, so I have a key and I have an address and I can sign my transaction. This is great. Now I want to do a smart app. I want to make one of these templates. And you don't have the Exo stack. You have an enormous burden in front of you in order to build equivalent of a bespoke app that understands the thing you're working with. I'm not kidding. It took us at least half a year to get the first really working versions of AnyHedge in any good shape. And if we had the Exo stack, I'd imagine that'd be more like a week rather than half a year.
Exactly. Oh man, that was so painful. We learned so much, but it's one of those things where you're like, okay, not everybody needs to go through this crucible. It'll be much better if not everybody needs to, and they can just build the thing they want to build. It's like forcing web developers to go back to assembly or something like that. You could do it, and at the end of the process, everybody will be really smart and have a lot of knowledge. But there's a cost to that.
Yeah, and a lot of people won't follow through, so you're gonna get a lot of abandoned and incomplete projects that way.
Exactly. Okay. Yes. Thank you very much. So, yeah, this stuff has been building up in layers through like Fulcrum, which is one of the things we sponsor. The Electrum Cache library, which Jonathan builds on top of that to make it really easy to use, and then in the web browser or in like some kind of server. And then there's CacheScript, which is just absolutely invaluable in terms of making the virtual machine and programmability accessible to people who want to build apps. And it's pretty straightforward. Once you've used it and gone through a tutorial, it's like, oh, okay, this is money and this is how you program it. And it's actually really pretty straightforward and easy to build up. But then to take that and then connect that to, well, okay, how do I build an app around this? And that's where, like Jonathan was saying, you have your smart contract, you make a template that explains to an app how to use that smart contract, and then the wallet will be able to look at that template and be like, oh, okay, I know what I got to do. Yeah, no problem. I can do that. So yeah, it's a bunch of layers that we've got to build up, and it's going to be awesome. Anyway, did you guys have anything else you wanted to add to that before I move on to another topic?
Not necessarily. Like, if people are interested, I can go into ridiculous depth at the Electrum Cache side, but I mean, we're not here to talk programming, so maybe it's better to just move on.
I like ridiculous depth. That's what we're about. Okay. All right. So anyway, Exo Stack, Exo Wallet. This is big stuff. But as I've said elsewhere, it's to some degree, it's still big words. So we'll be working that, and we'll put something out there that puts meat on these words and lets you get a hold of it and try it yourself. But of course, we won't do that until we think it's at a level that is actually reasonable. And that's going to include all parts of it, right? So the whole developer experience of the libraries themselves, documentation, example code, and so forth. We'll get there. We'll have something for you as soon as we can. The next topic on the list that I had was the 2025 chip proposals. That's the cache improvement proposals, which is Bitcoin Cash's process, the way that we improve Bitcoin Cash as a network in a decentralized way. And we've had some interesting developments that have been both very long in coming since like 2021. How long has VM limits?
2021.
2021. So one of these is very long in coming, and then it's also spanned the range to extremely last minute updates to it.
Literally July.
Literally July. Yeah. So I don't know, Uname, you want to kind of explain what's going on there with these chips and the general protocol's perspective on it?
Yeah, I believe we released an assessment on this before, and last time we talked about this, we recommended one of them, and we endorsed one of them, the very long coming one, and we advised extreme caution on the other one, which was the one that was literally July. So there was some development since then. So to recap a little bit, there was the VM limits chip, which aims to overall make the to o- so for a even bigger context, there was some existing limits, generally generally categorized as the SIGCHACS limits, that limits how the density of how many signature operations and a couple of other things that are very resource CPU intensive. It limits those resource intensive operations to a certain density limit within each transaction, so that people cannot make extremely resource consuming transactions for very little cost that clogs up the network and make your nodes scream and collapse. So we have some existing limits, but those limits were done in a very awkward way, such that they kind of work, but they also allow for some worst cases that are bearable but not very comfortable. And on the other hand, some auxiliary limits like the stack limits that are just added in a haphazard way over the years. They work in preventing the network from collapsing, both in BCH and BTC, but they turn out to also greatly limit the capabilities of smart contracts, which we are aiming to do in the UTXO fashion on the Bitcoin Cash. So with the interest, with some of our past upgrades, like the introspection upgrades, which greatly simplify things and make smart contracts in general a lot more efficient within existing limits, and the cash tokens upgrade, which allowed us to basically infinitely expand smart contracts across multiple transactions by the way of abstraction. We kind of got around those limits, just as check data sig initially got around the no introspection circumstances. But a lot of it has to be done in a very awkward and very inefficient way. So the VM limits chip aims to fix that, makes the worst case a lot more bearable, and at the same time give us some much more sensible limits in terms of what we can do for smart contracts, so that people don't need to unnecessarily split up the contracts, which adds complexity and reduces security for everybody. And that is overall a great thing. You guys should really go and read the chip yourself. And then so that is the long running one from 2021. And then a lot of people were anticipating it. And then the one that emerged much later in July was the Big Ints one, which aims to expand our numbers allowed in smart contracts from the 64 bits before. Some of you might remember in 2023 we expanded that from 32 bits into 64 bits, hence allowing any hedge contracts larger than 40 BCH. that was a cool one. Having those limits will be disastrous in today's context. But
oh no, it's no problem. You can spend weeks and weeks developing hacks to make it work. It's no problem at all.
By weeks, you mean like initially you planned it for weeks, and then it turns out to be months.
Yes, yeah, right. Oh god, it's awful.
Jesus. But anyway, so in the process of developing and finalizing VM limits, Callan and Jason discovered that it probably makes a lot more sense for a lot of contracts if the numbers themselves also get a really hard look instead of the very conservative way we have seen before at 64 bits. And it turns out that there was an ancient setup at 258, I believe, 258 bytes, not bits. Bytes that was later also shut down and constrained in the same way that Satoshi did the 1 megabyte limit, which was kind of hilarious. And it turns out that that limit is still doable, and having that limit would basically just unleash a lot of multiplication, intermediates, and so on and so forth that would otherwise need to be carefully managed against. Like, you multiply two large numbers, you have to make sure they don't overflow. You have to set in security checks, and this, if you have that unlocked, then then you don't need a lot of those workarounds anymore in the same spirit as the VM limits chip itself. And that is really cool, but the problem is that it came really late. So, and we being, pretty conservative outfit in terms of security and robustness, we advised caution. We gave it a lot of flack in discussion, and I think we have seen sufficient progress to change our mind. And you guys should also go on our Twitter, like the post right before the space, right before the spaces is our endorsement for both of the chips. And I think it's a good read. You guys go read.
Yeah, it's linked in the Twitter space. It's linked below that. Yeah. Yes, thank you, Uname. So, yeah, as Uname said, we came out very conservative, right? Because this thing popped out, at least on the surface level. This thing popped out at the very last minute and scared us to death. And but it turns out that what it is Uname explained it to some degree, but it's an extension of the VM limits chip is really what it is. It's more like a realization that they had during the VM limits chip, but it was a significant enough realization that it deserves its own chip that explained the specific situation. So it's kind of like an addendum chip attached to the main chip, the VM limits, the virtual machine limits chip. Anyway, it all looks pretty exciting, and as Uname said, we're pretty convinced that it's safe, that it's valuable, and that it's low cost, which are all very important to the chip process. So in the comments of the space, Bitcoin Jason, who has done a huge amount of work with onboarding Townsville, really impressive work, and we have enjoyed the fruits of that when we visited there several times. Where you can just go there. We stayed as a whole team for what was it? Several weeks, 2 weeks. I don't remember how long it was. A long time. And we more or less didn't spend anything with BCH the whole time. We went and got food, transportation, our lodging, the hotel we stayed at, everything we did, groceries, cafes, whatever. Everything we did was pretty much in BCH. So thank you so much for the work that you did there. But he had a question. And his question was, what's the difference between BIPs and chip? I think that's basically the question. See, the BIPs versus what we do in Bitcoin Cash. Uname, you want me to explain that, or do you want to do it?
Oh, I can give a very quick summary, and if you spot anything missing, you can fill in.
A minute, go.
I'm sure quite a few of you have read the BIPs, the BIPs, that have been a thing, a thing in in a certain GitHub repo that was maintained by Luke Dash Jr. Since the very ancient times, way before the split of BTC and BCH. So if you boil it down to its essence, BIPs are basically proposals that are generally very highly technical in nature. They don't necessarily need to be consensus. They could be consensus. They could be protocol. They could be wallet formats or whatever. They could be something that is highly essential but has nothing to do with consensus or network rules whatsoever. Like BIP 39. But in general, they describe what kind of upgrade you want to have, and basically, basically that's about it. At best, they sometimes would recommend a upgrade strategy. An upgrade strategy, but otherwise, the BIPs are strictly documents about the very upgrade itself, and very little in terms of other things, while chips generally chips as a thing emerged after the BCH split and a bunch of other BCH drama. The chips in general, they include the technical parts just as BIPs do. In fact, it is generally a bare minimum requirement to include those. Where appropriate, they would also have upgrade strategies, like technical upgrade strategies. But very importantly, chipping is a process that generally culminates in locking in and activation, and things that happen before that. You need to gain social consensus, you need to gain testing, you need to provide rationale, and things like that. Motivations are sometimes provided in BIPs, but they're not generally a requirement. But while instead in chips, you have the rationales, you have the risk assessments as generally recognized requirements. It is a complete journey, a complete pathway to upgrading instead of just a collection of things, a collection of a couple or a few things that describe the upgrade itself. Like like here are the things you do, and every time you do this, you move closer to having the upgrade. And it is not guaranteed that they succeed, but you will need to do this. So yeah, I see chip as more of a process, and BIPs as just descriptions.
If I translate that to a corporate perspective, like people who have experience working in corporations, you might see if you've worked with or worked in an engineering department, there's like a technical document that's like, this is a thing we could do, or this is a thing we're working on, and these are all the technical details of it. And that's one thing, and that's really important to have. You have to have that, and that's more or less a BIP. The BIP, the old documents that have been published in a central repository controlled by a kind of lunatic. But yeah, that's the way things were done in the past. But with chip, it's more like the full picture. If you work at a corporation, for all their weaknesses and whatever, they have some great strengths, and one of those is you don't do things for no good reason. So you have this thing that says this is the technical description of what we could do, one thing that we could do. And then you have to have a lot of other questions. What are the costs of doing that thing? What are the benefits of doing that thing? What will our users think about that thing? Will it actually create value for the network? Will people actually use it in a significant way? Will it cause problems for the existing users? Will it cause problems for anyone? And so forth. All of those much higher level questions of why do you want to do this thing, and convincing that this is actually a really good idea. And so the bar for chips is incredibly higher to be a good chip than it is for a BIP. You could have a technical thing that's like, oh, that sounds cool. That's neat. That's really nice. But then when you really get into the details and you realize, well, yeah, that might create some benefits, but the cost is going to be huge. It's going to require every single miner. And by miner, I mean like every single device. You could have some design that you say, we're going to upgrade the network and it's going to be awesome. But it causes every single miner to need to upgrade their firmware or something like that, that's going to cost millions and millions of dollars for all these miners and operations to upgrade. Yeah, okay, that's a bad idea, right? But BIP doesn't really get to that level, whereas Chip does. Chip is at that higher level of, does this really make sense in the big picture? You think that's fair, Uname, to say that much?
Yeah, and importantly, you not only have to consider those questions, you not only have to write down the questions and write down the answers. You have to actually go out and do the convincing. Like you actually have to do that. Like a lot of people, I think a lot of people make the mistake of assuming that, if I write something, it has happened in the past. If I write down something that is convincing, or sometimes I don't even write down something that's convincing. I don't even write that down. It's just something that is obviously important to me. It's so obvious, man. And I don't go around convincing people, and neither did anyone else find it important enough to go around convincing. But yeah, it is so important. It is ridiculous that it's not activated, and then it turns out that it's not activated, and then I will scream about it. That's not how it's done. You actually have to go out and do the convincing and document it, which Jason is frantically doing right now for the Begins chip. So that is important. That is an important part. You have to go out and do the convincing, and you have to document the thing so that people know that you have convinced these people, as opposed to just go out in, I don't know, some random smoke-filled room in the back of some club with a few very important people, and then you sit down and say, "Are we doing this?" Yes. Oh, so it is done. You have to actually do those things in the open, and I think that makes a difference.
That's right. Everything being done in the open. Yeah.
I also have a way I want to describe this. So, a BIP is a formalized way to propose a change, right? That this is a document. A chip is also nothing more than a document, but a document that is carefully designed to help you either reach consensus or fail at reaching consensus. The chip process is some guidelines for how you go about making that chip so that it actually gets consensus, right? It helps you take the steps you need to take to achieve consensus. And so we can confidently say that if half a year before activation, you cannot demonstrate that you effectively already have consensus, then we can just safely all say, didn't happen this year, let's move on.
Yeah. And for what does it mean, the consensus, right? Like that's a little bit abstract thing if you've not actually been in the details and the middle of accomplishing or reaching some kind of consensus with Bitcoin Cash. That consensus means, okay, let me say what it's not. Many people think, chip process is a voting process, and it's absolutely not a voting process. What it is a process of convincing, as Uname has attached this word to it a long time ago, and it's a very appropriate word, convincing. You convince people, and then other people are going to say, you know what? I'm not convinced yet. Maybe it's good. I don't know. But the default is, you know what? I'm not convinced. I don't have time. I don't think it's valuable, whatever the case is. But over time, you look at it at a particular really good proposal and you think, you know what? This is actually very valuable and it's very low cost. I think this is a good idea. But, I'd like to see more. And at some point, and that's what the chip process helps to reach, You decide as a project owner, for example, of Electron Cash, which Jonathan runs, or the Bitcoin Cash node, or Bitcoin Verde, or Bitcoin Nuth. Those are full nodes, or of a business like General Protocols, BCH Bull. Each individual involved here, or organization involved, says, yeah, this has reached the point that I think this is something we should specifically activate. This is something we should do. And it's complete enough that it's ready. Yes, this is something that we are going to do. And we are literally going to implement this for this specific year's upgrade. That's your individual choice. That's the organization's individual choice. This is not a vote. This is where a node says, yes, we're going to do this for 2025. And if you haven't seen enough signal from others that they also think it's a really good idea and that there's no problems with it or serious problems from people that you believe and you trust, then you just say, yeah, we're going to do it. This is something we're going to do. It's not a vote. It's not something where other people are imposing a decision on you. It's something where you are deciding what to do based on looking at the signals from others and on your own analysis. All right. The chip process is awesome. And it's one of those famous things where people have long said, wait, I don't totally understand what it is. And I think that's a bit of a message on that we're actually developing a decentralized ecosystem, which, as Saqib said at the beginning of the space, is something relatively new that we're working on and trying to make work. And this is a part of it.
I tend to make a more humble take on this, which is that it might not be the perfect thing, but it has worked so far. It has worked for a while, and there's not that many things in BCH that we can say that
That's too cynical, but yeah. No, we've come a long way from where we were. If you look at, for example, BTC and how decisions are made there's an unspoken process, and the unspoken process is you can present whatever the hell you want. It doesn't matter. You might even get a BIP number assigned by the High Priest Luke Dash Jr. But in the end, all that matters is whether the core team decides to implement it or not. They make all the decisions on it. So yeah, the process is very clear,
and there's no clearly documented process of convincing or getting convinced. So what it ends up is that you shout a bunch of anonymous accounts shout over each other on Twitter and Reddit, and then everybody gets super angry. And then in the case of Reddit, you start banning people, and then people get even angrier, and it goes on, and nothing ever gets done. So
until Satoshi Peter Todd says it's okay. Yeah, so recently HBO has apparently decided that Peter Todd was Satoshi, which is hilarious. Anybody involved in Bitcoin knows it. That's ridiculous. Even he himself is like, oh, I'm not Satoshi. What are you talking about? Anyway, yes, there's no real process. The real process in other places is the company that runs the chain makes a decision, or the team that runs the full node that everyone uses makes the decision, period. There's really nothing else to it. Whatever talk and noise goes on, the final decision is made there by the kingmaker. But we're trying to actually do something better, and that's what chip process does. Jason, not Jason Dresner, but Bitcoin Jason, the adoption guy who's done so much work in Townsville. I hope that answered your question. What's the difference between BIP and chip? All right, let's get on to the last.
I also linked the Bitland website for people who want to see kind of like how messed up it is.
That's the Bitland one, where it's like, hey, let's do a tongue-in-cheek representation of decisions on BTC. It's not tongue-in-cheek at all. It's like really straightforward. You can do whatever you want, but in the end, if Luke doesn't agree with you and Peter Todd or whatever doesn't agree with you, it's over. That's it. That's really all there is to it. All right. So last part, just a little bit of self-promotion because we're very happy about the progress is with BCH Bull. Sakib, are you still there? You want to present a little bit about the success of BCH Bull? Like, what are your thoughts on it? Or if you're not there, I can present it.
No, I'd like to hear your thoughts, and then I'll chip in afterwards. But
yeah, what can I say, man?
Yeah.
So I included this link that we promoted very recently, which says launched October 2022, so 2 years ago exactly, pretty much. And since then, BCH Bull has proved that DeFi is more than possible, that it's totally viable and works on Bitcoin Cash. So there's been over 500,000 BCH through contracts, through the AnyHedge contracts using BCH Bull. And that's 100 and if you count each of those contracts at the time it was made, right? Because the price has moved all over the place. But if you count each of those contracts, that's 175 million US dollars of contracts. And I can absolutely promise with complete certainty that, you know, whatever, you have to trust me on this particular point, but we don't manipulate that. We don't make any effort whatsoever to make fake contracts or any kind of silliness or shenanigans. So as far as we know, as far as we're concerned, there's no manipulation on these numbers. So that's just 500,000 BCH of contracts, $175 million of contracts. And that's across many assets, right? Gold, silver, US dollar, euro. What else is there? Indian rupee, I said silver, Ethereum. Did I miss any? Anyway, across a bunch of assets.
In that context, John, we should be fully transparent, I think, and say that we don't do anything to manipulate the numbers, but we do use the BCH Bull as part of our hedging strategy within the company. We also need protection from volatility, and we, of course, appreciate a protection that is non-custodial. And so we are doing some hedging on our own, but we're still like a fraction of the data. Like we're so small, we barely matter in the grand scheme of things anymore.
And it's not like it's a lot of coins, but I personally also use BCH Bull a lot, and yeah, and it's been really good.
Right. Yeah. We use it, and it's been extremely important. So for any business that's going to get investment and is serious about Bitcoin Cash, the business is going to run on Bitcoin Cash to a large degree, right? The revenue of a real on-chain business is going to be in BCH, period. So yeah, your revenue is there, your capital is there, making some kind of protection for that so that you're protected against volatility is important. And yeah, absolutely, we do that. So yeah, but also like Jonathan said, it's tiny percent of the overall volume. Like I wish we had so much business going on that we were spending, hundreds of thousands of BCH. But we'll get there eventually, but we're not there today. But yeah, the overall volume is huge. Like we're a tiny piece of that. So yeah, the BCH Bull has been growing over time. Bitcoin Cash Authis made this post about it before we even made the post, which was really awesome. We were getting ready to make this post, and then Bitcoin Cash Authis posted on Twitter, "Hey, look, there's been 500,000 BCH." I was like, "Oh shit, people are watching!" And there's actually people paying attention to everything, and that goes for the volume, the premiums, and all kinds of stuff. It's been mind blowing to watch and see people get engaged with it and make use of it, and we're so happy about seeing that going on. Sakib, what did I miss?
Yeah, no, your appraisal is very similar to my opinion. BCH Bull has shown two things. It has shown that technically it is possible to have decentralized finance on Bitcoin Cash. Without any doubt, it is the leading flagship application that is running on Bitcoin Cash. So it's shown that it's technically possible with a good user experience and a good user interface. And the second thing that it has shown is that there is enough demand and enough support for it to be financially viable and thrive as a product and grow as a product and continue to grow. So 2 years ago, when John, you first told me about this AnyHedge contract and the business model of having a settlement service that's going to earn a fraction of a penny or two or three or however much it was based on each contract, and I was like, there's no way that you're going to get the volume to support, general protocols as a company. And I was extremely doubtful that we would get, even close to any kind of revenue that was meaningful. But what it has shown is that actually the business model that you envisaged and thought about can thrive and has done. So we're still at the tip of the iceberg. If we look at DeFi volume in general, across all the coins and layers, and we're a tiny percentage, but we're a growing percentage, and we have a huge space to move into and a huge space to attract more users. And I think one of the great things about what I've seen Bitcoin Cash users, BCH Bull users, is once they come, generally speaking, the feedback has been exceptional. And I think they've stayed, right? We haven't had people come and say, this is terrible, and I'm going straight to another chain or another product. I think our user retention is good. And so, yeah, I think your assessment is great. And there's still a lot more work to be done. I feel like we're still in a small bubble. We're still within the Bitcoin Cash, community. And I think we have saturated it. I think everybody in Bitcoin Cash who is a moderate or even an early user will have heard of BCH Bull. So I think our penetration of marketing has achieved saturation within the Bitcoin Cash community, but we need to now really attract the other DeFi users, the traders, the speculators, and the savers, as well as the merchants and the companies beyond the Bitcoin Cash borders. And that's going to be the next challenge. So yeah, it's an exciting time. I'm pretty happy with how it's gone, but I don't think we can afford to rest at this stage and be too congratulatory. I'm always a very pessimistic guy. If people actually speak to me, they say I'm the most pessimistic surgeon, because I'll always talk about the next problem and the next step and the next complication. And so you always got to think 3 steps ahead. So yeah, I think we can't get too happy, but be pleased.
Absolutely. Yeah, where we are today is like I said, $175 million, 500,000 BCH is really nothing on the scale of where BCH is aiming to be. And that's also where the XO stack comes in, right? Like, okay, well, let's make it accessible to the next, the next order of magnitude of people, the next order of magnitude of developers, and let's keep building it and keep expanding and going from there. Really looking forward to that as well.
This is my my X Spaces or Twitter Spaces wasn't working when you guys were discussing the XO, but my understanding is a kind of part-time developer, shall I say, of the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem, is I see a lot of passion and a lot of upgrades that have occurred over year after year after year, and the VM limits and big int, and there's a big discussion about how it's going to improve things and make smart contracts more powerful and safer and more secure. And that's great. And a lot of energy goes into that. And what I understand from a very basic point of view is that you're basically increasing the horsepower of the network, which is amazing. But then I look behind you and say, well, there's amazing horsepower, but where are your horses? Where are the horses? Who's running on this? And really, with the exception of 2 or 3 products, BCH Bull being the leading one, I would say, there isn't that many horses. And so increasing the horsepower year after year after year is amazing. But I do think that XO is probably even more important, because what XO is going to do is not make the horse, but it's going to open the stable, right? So horses can bolt out. And from my very early insight into it, what I see, the developers building is pretty exciting. Me as a kind of entrepreneurial developer on the front end side of things, with has ideas for products, when I've seen what's already being developed by GP, I'm like, oh my God, I could probably start building apps. Once this is up and going, I've got 2 or 3 ideas I could probably start building.
Yes.
Without having the knowledge of it, right? So I'm like, okay, this is cool. I could probably start, in 6 months' time, I'll be like, I see what Jim's done. I could knock something up and create something that would work. And I do have some use cases with the journal and with the surgical community. And so I think XO is just as important as the chips that are about to come through, because there's no point having the horsepower without the horses.
Yeah, just as a historical example, right? People who maybe are aware of ETH today don't have the historical concept of what it was before it really blew up as DeFi, right? Before the name DeFi even existed and the concept of doing it really blew up, it was just a nerd chain, right? It was literally called the World Computer and nobody cared about it. It was kind of neat and it was kind of fun to play with, but whatever. But once it actually became useful through the tooling and the developer experience and so forth, it was really just a nerd chain with just a handful of people working on it. So yeah, this explosion that we're aiming for is a really important thing. And it goes far beyond just what General Protocols is going to do itself, and expands out into what all the ideas that are possible.
So for people who are wondering, yes, we are building all this infrastructure, and yes, it will benefit everyone else, and ultimately in a roundabout way benefit ourselves massively. But it is important to know that the Axo project also benefits ourselves directly in the case of AnyHedge and BCH Pool. Massively, like we started this we started having the concept of this a long time ago, because in case people are not aware, BCH Pool as it stands right now, it is a product that we are proud of, but it is still a freaking bespoke wallet that is purpose built inside a browser window that is difficult to adapt to a lot of other things that we want to do, and you also can't easily do liquidity provider with it, among other things, and so on and so forth. It's like, if we want to continue to grow, we also have to build this thing. So it is a win-win project, but we're not just doing it in public interest. It is very important to us in a very direct kind of way.
Yes. Capitalism has some strengths. Okay, yes. Sorry, I was muted. Yes. So we've done a lot. There's a lot going on there. It's going to benefit us. Capitalism and self-interest has a lot of value as well. The nice thing about BCH is it's a great mix of there's personal interest in making things work, and then there's also general interest where the things that you do benefit others. It's a great setup. It's hard to beat that. So it's excellent that we're working here, and I'm really happy to be able to work in a place like this. So we've also gone over, even excluding all the silliness that Twitter imposed on us with canceling the space and us having the new one restarted. We're well over our time limit, but is there anything else you guys wanted to bring up before we wrap things up?
Nothing on my end.
All right. So I have made a long thread of posts about the different topics and our thoughts on things and different subjects from this discussion. So please check out the original post for this talk, for this space, and check out all the links in there. Every one of those is a valuable link, something useful to check out and to be aware of. So go and have a look at that. And yes, I hope you enjoyed the space. We really love to see what's going on in BCH. We really enjoy being a part of it. And we appreciate everybody else who's a part of it as well. So thank you very much for your time. It's been good to talk with you guys. We'll see you next time on General Pool.